Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mickey Dollens. I'm the Regional Government Affairs Manager for the Action Fund, and I'm also a current legislator from the OK state of Oklahoma. I say okay, but we're doing a lot better now that Ryan Walters is gone. Am I right? My kids, they love to play this game called Fact, Fiction, or Belief. I'll give them a random topic, and they have to categorize it as either fact, fiction, or belief. It's a great game for critical thinking, which is very important in a state like Oklahoma. For example, Harry Potter. Dad, that's fiction. Very good. The earth revolves around the sun. Fact. Pineapple goes best on pizza. Dad, that's your belief. That's your opinion. You get the idea, right? Okay, your turn. Reaching out to your elected official actually makes a difference. Fact, fiction, or belief? Well, half of y'all are looking at me like I'm delusional. You didn't know Neil deGrasse Tyson was going to make an appearance today, did you? But as skeptics, as freethinkers, we like data, research, evidence. Research like this Michigan State study that said that only 19% of Americans surveyed in a particular year contacted their elected officials. And the fact that legislators are up to 20% more likely to be influenced to vote the way you want just by one constituent reaching out. Another study showed that staffers often misestimate what the constituents actually want because we can't represent what we don't hear. I asked my legislative assistant, LA for short, how many constituent contacts we got last month. Can you believe this? 3 phone calls and about 6 emails from actual constituents. Today, we're going to focus at the local level, at the municipal and state level, where you have the most power to influence change, and where also this legislation most likely impacts your life the most. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not naive. I've served 10 years in the Oklahoma House of Representatives, and this is by far the most extreme political climate that I've ever seen. I understand that traditional civic engagement feels ineffective and, quite frankly, hopeless when you consider what we're up against. Religious extremism, the consolidation of power by the president, deploying federal troops in American cities, censorship, and weaponizing the courts. If you're feeling overwhelmed, drained, saddened, and even disoriented, you're not alone. In fact, it means you still give a damn. People ask me just 10 minutes ago, how do you still have hope? I hear that all the time. And I'll share a vulnerable moment with you. Just last month, I was invited to speak at a banquet about civility in politics. And I just couldn't bring myself to it. And I never turn down speaking opportunities, I promise you. But again, how do you talk about civility in politics when masked ICE agents are disappearing people, Christian nationalists are legislating their religious beliefs into law, and the Constitution is being trampled on a daily basis? The next day, I started to notice that my body was feeling worn out, unlike anything I've ever felt. I mean, I've gone down mountains 95 miles per hour in a bobsled, and I felt like I just got hit by a truck. So I thought I'd better do the responsible thing. I went and got some blood work done. I told Doc, hey, I feel really sore. I don't get it. I'm not doing anything different. Well, they ran the blood test. A few days later, the results came back. She called me and said, your stress, everything looks good on the blood test. Your stress, your soreness is most likely due to stress. And in that moment, I started to wonder if any of this was worth it. Fighting extremists in the Oklahoma legislature, combating Christian nationalism around the country, constantly on edge, never knowing what the next headline would bring. It would be so much easier to just check out and give up because it's all so heavy. But then that's when I realized that that's exactly what Trump's regime wants us to do. They want us to feel defeated, distracted, disempowered, because who benefits when we give up? The politicians who want to control our personal lives. Corporations that put profit over people on the planet. And zealots who want to control what we believe in. Their entire strategy depends on one thing: us giving up. So I dug deep and I reconnected with my why And that's when I realized the people in this room give me hope, my kids give me motivation, and this work gives me purpose. As Thomas Paine once said, I prefer peace, but if trouble must come, let it be in my time so that my children can live in peace. Even in the most difficult circumstances, we have the power to choose how we engage. So where do we go from here? To the hotel bar. Open bar, drinks on Dan Barker. But before we hit the beach with pina coladas in hand, we need to do some work. I've created this framework called the Forward Method to help everyday people navigate the legislature, city council, how to effectively lobby their elected officials. I've had the opportunity to share this message with our friends in Austin, with our friends in Arkansas. This is the Ozark chapter. And also just last month in San Francisco. And speaking of the presentation in San Francisco, just hours before that presentation, I was getting ready and I accidentally dropped my shirt in the toilet. Don't worry, it wasn't this shirt. But in that moment, I realized I had the perfect opener for my speech. I appreciate my shirt, and I can appreciate the toilet, but I prefer them separate, like church and state. Am I right? Yes, I wore a lot of cologne that day. I want to take you back real quick to 2017. I had just left the classroom. I was actually laid off due to budget cuts, so that's why I decided to run for office. And I went from the classroom to the Capitol. And one of my first experiences of being a legislator, I walked into my little tiny broom closet of a Democrat office in the basement of the Capitol, and sitting on my desk was a little postcard, a note from a 10-year-old girl named Kaylee. She said, Representative Dollens, you just got elected, you represent me, I'm your boss. I want to tell you about a story. I went to the Cleveland County Fair. I was having a great time, went with my mom and my grandma. We were riding rides, eating good food, playing games, and then I came across a carny game where they were using goldfish as prizes. She said, I felt bad for them because half of them were dead. They were in this hot water, they were belly up, so I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to save at least one of these goldfish. So she played the carny game, and then she played it again and again, as you do with carny games, and then she finally won a little goldfish and named him Ripples. Took Ripples home, put him in clean water, gave him fish flakes. She felt good about the change she made in her own backyard. Well, unfortunately, she woke up the next day and Ripples was dead. So she turned that sadness into passion. She said, Mom, what can we do to save more animals? She goes, you should reach out to your representative. And so I read this and I said, absolutely, this is exactly why I was elected, to help my constituents. So I invited her and her family to the Capitol. We did our research. We found that quite a few states have pets as prizes that are banned throughout the state, a statewide ban. So we filed the legislation, and the first week of committee work came by, nothing. Second week came by, still no word, hadn't had a chance to present the bill in front of the committee members. And then the third and final week of committee came by, and at this point, if you don't get a committee hearing, the bill is dead. And then a more senior member came to me and said, Dollens, have you lobbied for your bill? I said, no, I wrote the bill, I filed it, I did everything right. No, you need to go talk to the committee chair, and you need to go get a committee hearing. So I go to the committee chair and I say, hey, I've got this 10-year-old constituent who's very passionate about these living beings are being used as prizes. It's a terrible thing. He said, Dollens, you know we got bigger fish to fry. I said, pretty good. That was pretty good, but you're a jerk. So I went back to Kaylee and I said, Kaylee, I hate to break it to you, but we've got to pivot. We have to adapt. And she goes, well, what do you do? I was like, I don't know. I didn't know, like, this is how it works. And her mom said, well, why don't we reach out to the local news? I said, you know what, that's a pretty good idea. I had made some relationships with local journalists. I knew they were overworked, always looking for stories. So I reached out to the local news, and this is what happened.
Carnivals are filled with your normal fare, from food to fun rides. Games as well. But when then 10-year-old Kaylee Kennedy was at a Metro festival in 2017, she spotted fish were being given away as prizes. Concerned the fish weren't being kept in a healthy environment, she won a goldfish, named him Ripples. Thing is, Ripples didn't make it through the night.
I start freaking out and crying.
Concerned, Kaylee turned to lobbying her legislators. Last year, Representatives Tammy West and Mickey Dollens wrote legislation to keep pets from being doled out as prizes in the state and a $250 fine. The bill doesn't impact agriculture, educational, vocational programs, or pet stores, but solely pets being used as prizes for games or business door prizes. The time ran out for the bill to be heard last year.
I'm just honored to run it for such a bright, young, compassionate girl.
But Dollens says Judiciary Committee Chair Chris Kennedy told him there aren't too many bills this session. News 4 stopped by his office, and our messages to Kennedy have not been returned.
Yes, there are bigger issues in the state. I mean, we've got an educational crisis. We've got a lot going on. However, we can't ignore the little things in lieu of the big.
With Kaylee under the weather, her mother Chelsea speaking in her stead, hoping to keep her daughter's idea alive.
We're just trying to get some pressure toward it so that the legislature can understand that this isn't just a little girl's dream.
Well, 2 days after that story aired, I got a call from the county elected official, the elected official there, and he says, Dollens, we saw Kaylee's story. We thought it made a lot of sense. We'd like to meet with her. So we arranged a meeting, and they said, hey, Kaylee, we saw your story. We're blown away by your advocacy, and we agree. It's not right. From this day forward, we're going to pass a county ordinance banning pets as prizes in Cleveland County. And since that day, there have been 4 other counties across the state that have banned pets as prizes. And while she didn't get her ultimate goal, which was a statewide ban, she effected change at the grassroots level in her own backyard, but more importantly, equipped herself with the knowledge and confidence to continue making change 9 years later. And I started thinking about the way in which she came about this. This was inspired, the forward framework is inspired by a 10-year-old. From goldfish to Christian nationalism, it works. Let's break it down. She found me as her stakeholder. She organized her messaging. She wrote a compelling story. She told her story. Then she reached out to me, and I dropped the ball on the watchdog, but we learned from that. So we had to adapt. We reached out to the local news, which resulted in raising awareness that then ended up in driving change. And we can take this from goldfish to Christian nationalism because let's face it, we're up against a lot. We're seeing legislation that's sweeping across the nation. They're trying to take over public education. We're seeing a judicial shift unlike any other time, and the coordination is scary. They're so well funded. For example, I would get emails like this, I still do, inviting me, a Democrat, to their conferences where they run these bill mills, 10 Commandments, church chaplains, release time, LifeWise. We heard about that earlier. And right there are some state senators from Oklahoma who are proudly holding up a Christian nationalist flag. They are so well funded and coordinated. We have to come together on this. And this is why it starts with direct action and the pathway forward. Now, before I get into all of this, don't worry. At the end, I'm going to have a QR code that you can snap with your phone that will give you all of these slides for free. You can keep them, you can share them far and wide. You can do what you want with them. But while we're talking about this, it's important to know that as individuals, every tactic, every strategy I'm about to lay out is completely permissible. Now, on the C3 side, we're going to primarily focus on education, and we'll hear about some members in here and today who have done just that. On the C4 side, we find candidates. We actually lobby for and against specific legislation. That's our C4 side. But as individuals, as members, you have the power to lobby. You have the power to endorse, to donate to campaigns, to even run for office. You can do all of that in your own time. So let's start at the basic level. We're going to start off with F, because when I first ran for office, when I was trying to figure out what was going on in government, the first person I reached out to, like a lot of people who are just beginning, is my U.S. senator. And they immediately directed me back to the state level because my issue I was calling about had to do with education. So if you're going to, whatever issue you take, you want to be able to categorize it either at the local, state, or federal level. Some of the big stakeholders at the local level, of course, are your school board members, your city council members. And then at the state level, we have one House member, one state senator. And at the federal level, you're going to have 2 U.S. senators, one U.S. House member. And if you don't know exactly who these people are, you can go to ballotready.org. Just put in your address. You don't have to put your email in. And we'll tell you exactly who your elected officials are, from the president down to your local school board member. And then when you're ready to reach out to them, let's say you signed up for the action alerts, even better. We'll get to that in a minute. But you want to be able to navigate the chain of influence here. Oftentimes when you call, you're going to talk to a legislative assistant. This is gold. They are the direct connection to the lawmaker. They're also policy experts. They have such a good pulse on the constituency if they're calling, right? So never get frustrated if you're not talking directly to the lawmaker to begin with. The legislative assistant is important. A little bit more on that in a bit. And then your elected officials. Oftentimes you may disagree with your elected official. What's the point of reaching out with them? They're not going to listen to me. Let me tell you, it makes a difference. You're going to have influence with them. They're going to be the ones who need to lobby the committee chairs, especially if you have a favorable elected official. They can have a lot of influence with the committee chairs. The floor leadership, the committee chairs, they completely dictate 100% which bills are heard in committee and which ones aren't. Going back to the legislative staff, they're the gatekeepers, subject matter experts, and from my experience, many of them end up running for office themselves. If you build great rapport with the legislative assistant in the beginning, you very well could be likely building a great relationship with the future lawmaker. Okay, moving on to organizing, messaging, and community. Storytelling rules. People love a good story. I could have given you facts and data about Pets' prizes across the country, and while that's important and impactful, it's nothing like an actual 10-year-old taking matters into her own hands and telling her story. It's the best way to communicate, especially with lawmakers. Our Action Fund resources are very, very pivotal in getting out this constitutionally sound messaging that is guaranteed to help you formulate a message that you can add your personal lived experience in to make it even more impactful. And then community building, right? Getting people together for educational events, going to the farmers market to distribute educational material. We're going to hear a great example from our Kentucky chapter earlier with John Sutton and the members who successfully lobbied against a terrible bill, which we'll get to. Here are some of my favorites that I hear constantly on the floor at the Oklahoma House of Representatives. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these two. That state-church separation is a myth. Get out of here. If you look at Supreme Court precedent, it's continually saying there is a wall of separation. Our rights come from God, not from government. This has been a greatest hit lately. But you have to remind them that rights can only exist in practice when they're protected by law. And America is a Christian nation. Remind them that not once in the Constitution is God, Jesus, Bible, or Christianity mentioned, but there is a provision prohibiting any religious test. And then I think we've heard this one before. This one just drives me up the wall, that we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. It is a form of democracy. It's like all trucks are vehicles, but not all vehicles are trucks. Tell them that, and they'll have to spin their gears for a little bit. Another great resource that Ryan Dudley mentioned earlier is that we have these testimonies that we've submitted that you can go and look at and help frame even more of your message to add on a bit to the action alert if you'd like. You simply go to submitted testimonies, and then it's divided up by state, by bill number, and the issue at hand. These are very important. Okay, once you've got your messaging ready to go, you've got your story, you've got a few data and facts in there, it's time to reach out. Here's a study that was done back in 2015, so 10 years ago, but it's still relevant today, except I think 5 is probably around 2 or 3 now. Of course, in-person visits, but hey, I live in Oklahoma. How am I going to go to D.C.? Don't forget that your U.S. senators and your U.S. representative have in-house districts, so where you can meet with the staffers, you can meet with them there. That's important. Also, anytime a constituent wants to meet with me, if you live far away from the Capitol, ask for an in-district meeting. You don't have to go all the way to the Capitol. Meet at a coffee shop. Phone calls are very effective. That's the number 2 best way. Email messages, add your personal story on it. Individualized postcard letters like Kaylee did. And here's another one. In 2015, social media posts made the top 5. Well, now more than ever, I promise you, every elected official is reading the comments. They're reading what people say. They're taking screenshots. This is evidenced in the next slide here. There was a more recent study that showed that congressional staffers were asked to comment on how effective is it to tag your elected official. Sometimes they turn this off, but just putting the name in there makes it available to search. Incredibly important. This is one way in which I communicate with my legislative assistant too. Screenshot, send, she helps me out. So Don't overlook the power of social media. I'm going to show you a secret sauce to really amplify the impact of your election alerts here in a second. So I've already had a couple of people come up to me today and say, I got signed up for these action alerts. That is great news. This is a perfect place to start. We're going to give you the template, the foundation to put in your own lived experience. It's already utilized and pre-written. And the way in which we decide to send these to you is at the beginning of session, when all these bills are filed, we mark them. And we are tracking the good bills, we're tracking the bad bills. And as they start to move through the legislative process, we try to catch them, especially in the committee process where it's the most easy to kill a bill. And then once that bill's up for a committee hearing, we'll get a notice, usually 24 hours at least in advance, and then we'll send you the action alert, okay? Once you get that action alert, look it over, add your input, your lived experience. Be sure to include your name, include your zip code, which will identify you immediately as a constituent, and then use that pre-written, that template that you have, that framework. Before you send the action alert, call your elected official that it's going to go to, talk to the legislative staffer, use that script that you have from the action alert, and then make note of that, get the staffer's name, say thank you, be very respectful. Remember, they're oftentimes overworked, underpaid. And then once you hang up, add that staffer's name to your action alert, great talking with you, and then press send. Right after you do that, take that, what you just said. I reached out to Representative Dollens' office, talked to Peyton. I'm going to follow up. This is what I said. Put in the action alert and say, you can take action too. Put in the link for the action alert. Boom. In 10 minutes, you just had 3 invaluable points of contact. That's going to go a long ways. If you don't have 10 minutes, at the very least, just shoot off the action alert. It's a lot better than nothing. Okay, here's one of the best ones I always hear. Should I reach out to my elected official even if I'm sure they won't listen? Yes, because if you don't, you're going to be silent, and silent is taken as approval. And in silence is where bad ideas flourish. But my elected official's great. I am pleased. Okay, give them a compliment. Say thank you for representing me. I promise you it's going to motivate them to do more. It's going to motivate them to stand up, to take an even bolder position on the issue. We love to also hear about the good things, right? Okay, so after you've reached out, we've got the watchdog part. Now, there's a lot of opportunities to be a good watchdog. We're going to hear from John Sutton in a little bit, and also we're going to hear from the Ozarks chapter. But the watchdog, so public appearances, try to catch your lawmakers and their town halls if they're still having them. You got to remember that politicians really care about funding and getting reelected. So don't overlook that. You can look up their campaign finances, go on there, look at the individuals who have maxed out to them. You can call those individuals, say, do you approve of XYZ that Ryan Walters is doing? I tell you what, the state chamber regretted they gave him $250,000 because just a year into his tenure, businesses started turning down Oklahoma. Volkswagen, Samsung, they turned down Oklahoma because of all the controversy. Guess what happened? The campaign funding dried up and he went away. It works. Report the violations. It's one of the best things you can do as a watchdog. You can report it anonymously. Our legal staff will write a letter. If necessary, we'll litigate it. It's one of the best things you can do to be a good watchdog. You can find that on our website at the top right there in the middle. All right. Next is to adapt to challenges. And inevitably, we're going to run into challenges. That's just the nature of government, whether your little girl is not going to get their bill heard, or you're trying to get your information out at a farmer's market and they shoot you down because of what you're talking about. It happens. That's when you need to rely on our resources at the Action Fund and with our legal staff. Take care of yourself. Like I said earlier, this stuff is heavy. It's okay to take a break. Just know that you have all of the people in this room and all the people who work for the Action Fund and the foundation. We're going to pick up the slack while you take that much needed break. Politics is a long game. We have to keep at it. We can't give up. We have to stay persistent. We also have to take care of ourselves. And a great example of adaptation is Chris Sweeney and James Brazil in the Ozarks chapter. They applied to have a booth at the local farmers market to give out information about non-theism. They wanted to educate their community. They were told no. So what did they do? They went home and they made backpack billboards. And they got more attention than they would have at a farmer's table market. And there they are, farmer's market table, and they're out there making difference. So backup plan, FFRF resources, and community. That's a great example. And here we are raising awareness. I mentioned about how getting Kaylee's story on the local news made a huge difference. I'm telling you, these multimedia journalists are so overworked. Every single day, they're responsible for finding a story, for editing it, for finding the interviews, and then at the end of all that, they have to go present it. And so if you have a good story like Kaylee's, they're going to pick that up, and then they're going to say thank you, and then they'll be going back to you and say, do you have any more ideas like that? It's a great way to get your message out. Also, use your social media. You never know when a lawmaker will look at what you're talking about. It does make a big difference. And then we're going to just go back to tell your story. Tell your story every chance you get. Okay, and here's a great example of all of this kind of encapsulated into one. John Sutton, with our FFRF Kentucky chapter, he was a watchdog. He used local media. He used social media and went to community events. And this is perfect for his as a chapter leader because everything he did, all of his advocacy, centered around education, educating his community. Let's roll the clip.
Our concern is that no group should be coming into the school and taking kids out of the school for any time during the school day, because it's more important for these kids to be getting the education that we're paying for with our public dollars.
So what is LifeWise Academy? I have to tell you, I've talked to an awful lot of people that have never even heard of it. And I'm going to tell you some things that's going to put your hair on fire. LifeWise Academy is what they call a release time religious instruction program. These programs allow public school students to leave campus during school hours to attend religious classes.
The model is strikingly similar to a multi-level marketing or pyramid scheme where the people at the bottom are encouraged to bring others to grow the operation. So, except here, the product sold is a religious ideology and the customers are our kids. So let me be clear though, this is not a Bible history class. This is not comparative religion. This is indoctrination into a very, very particular worldview, and it does not belong in our public education system. Because real religious freedom means freedom from pressure, freedom from coercion, and freedom from having someone else's beliefs shoved down your throat and pushed on your child. This is not going to go away overnight. So stay informed, stay vigilant, but do not stay silent. Period. And with that,
the Oldham County Board of Education voted unanimously against LifeWise Academy's application to provide off-campus religious instruction to students in the district.
All right, John, will you please take a stand? All right, let's give him a round of applause. That's what I'm talking about. And all the chapter members from Kentucky, thank you so much. I'm going to go through these a little bit faster, but remember, they're all available at the end on the QR code. Protesting is very important. We can even make that more impactful by tying it to a strike or a boycott. There's one thing authoritarians kneel down to, and that's the markets. We saw that with how effective it was when they reversed course just 5 days and $4.5 billion later after people started canceling their Hulu accounts. Yes. Here's an effective protest we had at the state capitol when I was trying to introduce and pass a bill addressing missing and murdered indigenous people, particularly women and girls. The same committee chair wasn't going to give me the opportunity to present, so we got a great protest at the capitol. We followed all of the laws. It was peaceful. We got the permits. And then I had to adapt. He had a personal vendetta against me, so I agreed to give it to another legislator. But at the end of the day, we got the bill passed, and it's been replicated in 4 other states. That's what's important. Thank you. And then to wrap it up, we're going to have to drive it home, driving the change. Between the foundation and the Action Fund, we have the most comprehensive strategy for fighting Christian nationalism for more than anyone in the country, which is suitable because we're the largest free thought organization in the nation. And it all starts right here with the membership, educating the public, reporting violations, engaging in protests, sending out those action alerts. That's when our legal staff can come in and then take action on those anonymous or those reported violations. We write amicus briefs. We provide expert witness. We're on the news, as you saw. And then you add that to the Action Fund, and we're endorsing good candidates. We're lobbying against bad bills. We're supporting good bills. We're writing policy that now for the first time we're actually on offense instead of having to play defense. And then at the end, we've got the great candidates that are having the courage to put their name on the ballot and run for office. Educate, litigate, and endorse candidates is the pathway forward. And speaking of running for office, I've got a couple minutes here, but this is really important. Freethinkers need to run for office. We need more non-religious people to run. I've talked to so many people who automatically disqualify themselves because of lack of faith. This couldn't be further from the truth. There are 7,400 state legislator seats available every 2 years. At the municipal level, there are over 250,000 elected offices available around the country. And within school boards, there's more than 86,000 positions available for school boards. It's pretty amazing to think that 1 in 3 Americans are non-religious, but we hold less than 1% of elected offices. You don't have to fake faith to win. I've been elected, never been beat. I've been elected for 10 years, never had to fake my faith. Always run as an authentic candidate. People ask you what church you go to. I say, well, I'm not a churchgoer, but I believe in transparency, accountability. Here's my phone number. It's on this walk card. I'll be here for you. I'll fill a pothole. I won't tell you what to preach. I won't preach to you or anything, but I'll help you out. That's what I help candidates do. If you know someone who wants to run for office, or if you're running for office, on the QR code is also the Authentic Candidate Workshop. I help people. I would be happy to help anyone in here who's interested in running for office with messaging and values-based messaging and how to prepare debates and all of that. Also, direct democracy. Thank you for everyone who's purchased one of my books. I go into much more detail on the power of direct democracy, whether it's ballot initiatives, voter referendums, election recalls. That is so important, and it's being stripped away in states across the country, including in Oklahoma. But one of those bills that pretty much gutted our direct democracy process is being challenged in court. And speaking of courts, I know there's a lot of talk about our tyrannical former state superintendent, Ryan Walters, and I want to give you some really good news right off the bat. The new superintendent who's just filling in for a year, the state Supreme Court reached out to him and said, you have 2 weeks to decide whether or not you're going to enforce the Bible mandate in classrooms. Less than 3 hours later, he put out a public statement and said, we will not be enforcing Bibles in any public school classroom, and we will not be infusing any Bible curriculum within any classrooms either. It's great news. So, I'm a little bit over, so I'm going to go right into this. Every time you take action as a citizen lobbyist, you move the needle forward. Whether reaching out to your elected officials, sending an action alert, reporting a state church violation, raising awareness, voting, volunteering, or running for office yourself, you are making a difference. Each action creates ripples you may never fully see, touching the lives and changing minds in ways that matter, just like John and Kaylee. Each of you in this room remind me that progress requires courage, and courage is contagious. It spreads from one brave voice to another, from one small act of resistance to the next, building momentum until little ripples become waves of change. And together, day by day, we will continue moving forward. Thank you. All right.